Failure is something that we all don't particularly like. Heading into a task, the last thing you want to happen is for you to fail at it. However, there's a stark difference between not really liking failure and actually being afraid of failure. What's up guys, welcome to another week's episode of GetPsyched, and this week we're going to be taking a look at the fear of failure. We're going to take a look at understanding what that fear is all about and how we actually overcome the fear of failure. So the first question to ask is, what is the fear of failure actually all about? Have you ever been afraid of something so much that the option of avoiding the situation altogether has actually been a preferred option for you? Where the risk of failure makes it kind of easier just to not try in the first place. If so, then it's quite likely that you've experienced that fear of failure before. Now, the fear of failure might present itself in this way, but it can also manifest in people in numerous different kinds of ways as well. For example, people might purposefully undermine themselves in order to give evidence to the fact that they don't feel that they can undertake a task, for example. And as a result, they actually don't go for the situation that might provoke that fear of failure in the first place. They don't try before they even start. In truth, to some degree, we've probably all experienced this to an extent. The fear of failure can be immobilizing, and as a result, due to the fear of failure, sometimes we can miss out on fantastic opportunities and experiences because we're so scared of what might happen at the end. Now, what exactly is it that causes this fear of failure in people? Well, in order to understand the cause of the fear of failure, we need to understand the subjective understanding of what failure means to the individual. Failure for one person might be totally different to failure in another person. However, it's also true to say that there are, of course, objective reasons as to why people can be scared of failing. Factors such as unsupportive parents, being undermined or ridiculed in childhood, experiencing traumatic events, or experiencing a negative event in the situation that they're most scared of. For example, if you've had a bad experience giving a presentation at work or to colleagues, the likelihood is that you might experience the fear of failure when you have to give another presentation. The truth is that yes, there are subjective understandings to what exactly fear is or what the fear of failure is to an individual, but there are also huge umbrella objective reasons as to why people can be so scared of failing. What's important here is that if you have a fear of failure, you think you have a fear of failure, to understand what the mechanisms are behind that. What are the reasons? What are the subjective reasons for you that have caused that fear of failure? You need to understand this first in order to experience development and in order to put exercises in place to actually deal with that fear of failure. Now, it's definitely true to say that the fear of failure can be experienced in multiple different ways. For example, you might be reluctant to try new things. The fear of the unknown, not knowing what will happen at the end, not knowing if you'll be any good at it, not knowing if you'll fail at it, can lead to this fear of new experiences and the fear of failure as a result. Self-sabotage is another example. Now, with self-sabotage, there can be a number of different ways in which self-sabotaging behaviour can be evident in those that are actually scared of failing. For example, procrastination. You might procrastinate at a task largely because you're actually scared that you can't undertake it in the first place, or that you can't undertake it effectively enough. A failure to follow goals or complete tasks. This lack of a linear purpose towards goals or tasks can at times be an example of people that are scared of failing. Low self-esteem is another example, as is perfectionism. Now, perfectionism is an example of people that might be scared of failure because those that are perfectionists often just undertake tasks that they know they're going to be good at. For example, if I know, and I'm just using an example here, if I know that I'm a good public speaker, I might not be that scared of failing at public speaking. Therefore, I might just focus in on public speaking and just doing that. I might perfect that to every degree that I can in order to avoid this fear of failure. Perfectionists are much less likely to undertake tasks that they've never undertaken before and never achieved anything at before because at times they're so scared of the possibility of failing. So with all that being said, how exactly do we get past a fear of failure? What's good about all of this is that we actually have the opportunity to change how we look at failure. We can either see the task that we're undertaking that we're scared of failing at as the end of the world, or we can see failure as an opportunity to progress and develop new skills. There have been loads of examples through human history of people that have experienced real failures in their lives, but instead of using that as an excuse to not try harder or not try new things, they've used it as an opportunity to learn and progress and develop as a result. Let's take the case of Michael Jordan, for example. Now, I'm an ex-basketball player, I love basketball, I still follow basketball, and so Michael Jordan has always been a big factor or a big figure in my life. But did you know that the guy who is arguably the most incredible basketball player of all time was actually kicked off of his high school team? When he was a junior in high school, he didn't make his varsity team. The coach told him simply that he wasn't good enough. However, Jordan didn't use this as an excuse to not try or to give up or to not try harder. He went to the gym that summer and took a picture of the team with him everywhere he went. Whenever he worked out, he used to look at that picture. Whenever he was shooting the ball, he would look at that picture as a reminder of the fact that he had failed. He used that as motivation. He used that failure as motivation and an opportunity to develop himself. After that summer, he of course made the team, went on to college and went on to the NBA. Another example is Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is one of the richest people of all time, one of the most successful businessmen of all time. But did you know he was actually dropped by Harvard? Harvard had his application to accept into the university and denounced him, said he wasn't good enough to get into the university. He failed, but he used that opportunity, he used that failure as an opportunity to progress and develop further. The same goes for people like Richard Branson. Again, a highly successful CEO, but did you know that he was actually kicked out of his high school? He dropped out of high school, didn't achieve any grades, didn't achieve any accomplishments in high school. Again, he failed, but in turn, he used that as an opportunity to motivate and develop himself. He didn't see that failure as a hurdle or as an obstacle that he had to therefore give up or not try any harder. The lessons that we need to learn here is that failure in itself is a lesson. Failure is an opportunity for us to progress and develop further. Now, one of the biggest issues with the fear of failure, and when we're thinking about overcoming that fear of failure, is that we need to understand that one of the biggest fears of the fear of failure is the unknown. Now, there's definitely an element of anxiety here when it comes to people that experience the fear of failure. And one of the biggest contributing factors to anxiety is what's called the intolerance of uncertainty. Now, that basically means that uncertainty in any situation, if you don't know what's going to happen, then you're not going to be sure of the outcome. How tolerant you can be of that, though, really determines how anxious you feel. So if you have a fear of failure, going into a situation and not really knowing the outcome, you might have a low tolerance for uncertainty, and as a result, maybe an increased fear of failure. One of the things you have to do here is to think cognitively and rationally. Develop a level of tolerance to that uncertainty that you're going to experience. For example, are you really going to fall flat on your face giving that presentation to colleagues? Starting to think a little bit more cognitively, using evidence, supplying evidence to suggest that actually, do you know what, the outcome of this is probably not going to be as bad as my biggest fear. Another thing that you can do is to learn some positive thinking patterns. Positivity is so powerful, and psychological research says time and time again that positivity or that positive mindset can really help progress forward for people with anxiety and for people with the fear of failure. Another thing that you can do is to think of the worst case scenario. Now, I'm aware that this might sound counterintuitive at first, but think about what people would do if that happened. Would they be supportive and understanding, or would they ridicule you? It's more than likely 90% of the time when I'm being objective here, I know that not every situation is as easy as this, but you could say 90% of the time people are going to be very supportive and understanding even if the worst case scenario happens. So you can start to understand that that fear of failure and that level of uncertainty, that intolerance of uncertainty, can dissipate to a degree when we think of the worst case scenario and work backwards from there. Another really important task that you can undertake to help with the fear of failure is visualization. Much like having a positive thought process and expecting a positive outcome from the thing that you're uncertain about, psychological research has shown that visualization can be really helpful for developing a tolerance to the uncertainty and reducing anxiety. Visualize your preferred outcome. What do you hope will happen? For example, I'm using the example of giving a presentation at work again. Use visualization to think about your preferred outcome. What do you hope is going to happen there? Walk through the steps. What do you need to do to get to that point? How do you need to think? How do you need to behave in order to get there? If you can start to do that, then you can start to work backwards and you can start to reduce that fear of failure. Okay guys, thanks so much for watching this week's episode of GetPsyched. This week we've been taking a look at the fear of failure. We've been taking a look at what that is, the causes of the fear of failure, and also some of the things that you can do yourself to reduce that fear of failure. Guys, if you've been enjoying this video, then make sure to hit the like button. You can also share the video. And if you've been enjoying GetPsyched as a whole, then you can hit that subscribe button and you can hit that little bell next to the subscribe button and you'll get weekly reminders of every time I upload. Thanks again so much for watching guys, and hopefully catch you next week.